This is episode 19 of the Florida Sound Archive podcast. I'm Jeff Kaiser. My guest for July 2021 is a name that I hope a lot of people are familiar with because she was in one of the most well-known South Florida bands of the 90s and even early 2000s, Livid Kittens. She's also played in a band called All the V Words, and now she is in a new band which is related to All the V Words called Vudra. Hopefully I'm pronouncing that right.
Vudra.
Vudra.
That's
all right. Paige Harvey. Paige, welcome on in. How are you?
good. Thank you for having me. I'm excited. I'm good. You know, It's crazy time, but I'm healthy.
That's good. How have you been staying busy during this crazy past year and change?
I want to say I was being really creative, but I wasn't. I did not feel creative most of the time. Basically, luckily for me, my husband was able to work the entire time. So we weren't stuck in the house with each other 24/7, but I was stuck in the house 24/7. So we did a lot of like outdoor stuff, hiking and bike riding and discovering all the Florida parks. This is me very tan. And just going to the beach and trying to stay busy. I mean, we wrote 2 songs together during quarantine, which was kind of cool because we had never really tried, because in the band, All the V Words, we would collaborate, but we never like sat down and like wrote music together. And I think we were relieved that it went so well because we're both kind of know-it-alls and kind of like very like, I don't want someone to tell me how to say something or sing something. And he doesn't want, and it was so smooth and wonderful that we were like, oh, awesome. That's a good thing. We can write music together. So we thought, okay, we're going to practice every week. We're going to write a song every week. And we wrote 2. I didn't feel so, I wrote a lot of lyrics and a lot of like just jargon during that time, but I just felt lazy,
I think a lot of us
it freaked me out at first. Now I'm okay and I got better, but at the beginning I'm a germaphobe to begin with. So it was hard for me to not like wash everything in my house and make him take all his clothes off before he came in the door and all that stuff. Like it was short-lived. Thank God I like relaxed into it. I was like, okay. But yeah, it was a little rough for me in the beginning.
I know it gets
I kept saying, if we don't get COVID, it's because of me.
Right. I know we'll get to a lot of this stuff prior to this, but All the V Words seem to have kind of really been going strong right as COVID started to really make its landfall. So how badly was that impacting you and your bandmates at that time?
It sucked because we had just come off a tour. We just recorded a record. We printed so many of them. I will send you one. And then we were like playing every weekend, trying to support the record. And we were starting, get a good crowd and get followers on social media and all that. And then we had like 3 shows planned and a photo shoot, and COVID happened. So we were going to play in Miami. We're going to play a couple different shows, and COVID happened. And so we stopped, and then we didn't really practice for the whole time, really, because some of us were a little scarier than others. Some of us were going out and living our lives a little more freely, which God bless you if you can do that. I was like, oh, and I have really old parents. And so I couldn't quarantine myself from them. I had to be with them. So anyway, it hit us hard. And so then when we started like, okay, let's practice, let's get together, we all ready, let's do this, I'm ready, you're ready. Valora, our guitar player, was like, yeah, I don't want to be in a band anymore. It was came as a shock, but not really. I guess it was just stressful for her. So for me, I understand that it can be stressful being in a band. There were certain things about being in All the V Words that was a little more stressful than other bands, but it's still really fun, so, but she had to do what she needed to do. And, it sucks because for me, it was nice being in a band with another girl, just cause it was a little camaraderie. And, she helped with the merch, and not that The boys don't help with the merch, but she helped with the merch. And so it was a little more like, okay, let's set up the table and make it pretty and put up lights and stuff like that. And she's just a badass songwriter. Like she just writes songs in a very unique way, which will be missed, but that's okay. You know, I guess it was time for a change. So here we are. We're Vudra now.
Yeah, Vudra now. And I also can't help but notice the picture in the background that looks like a painting of some sort of the More Flames to Fall in Love With from the album cover.
Yes, that was painted by Francesco Locastro. And it's my favorite painting. It's gone. I was on the plane when I moved to New York City with I love it. I ended up with it. It wasn't really a choice by anyone in the band. I'm like, this one's mine. So it's a beautiful painting and it's a beautiful album. That's actually my favorite Livid Kitten record too. So it works out that I got it.
Yeah.
And then that picture there, it's always weird trying to point to something on Zoom. That picture there is all the V words at Bumblefest. My friend gave it to us.
Okay.
That photo. She gave it to us for our wedding because I ended up marrying Jeff Hodap. Rock star.
Who's been in a number of bands himself.
He's been a lot. We just talked about it, but I'll go through them real fast. Roach Motel. He's a guitar player for them. And I guess like I didn't know this. When he was in Roach Motel, I was a little younger than him, not a lot, but enough that I didn't really go see Roach Motel ever play. But I knew he was in Roach Motel. And when I lived in New York City, I was in a band called, in a bar called Motor City. And these guys were talking about, We Can't Help It, We're From Florida. It was an LP that Jeff and his friend put out on their label. And I was like, oh, I know the guys who put that out. And it was when I just started dating Jeff. And they're like, oh yeah. He's like, do you know Jeff Hodap? He goes, you know the guitar player from Roach Motel? And I'm like, yeah, actually. He's like, that guy's a guitar god. And I was like, that's my boyfriend. And I was like, wow, he's famous. Anyway, he was in that band. Then he was in Drug Czars, which the Livid Kittens used to play a lot with them. Right. And that was Mike O'Brien from The Eat was in that band. And then Chuck Luce played drums for a while. They had rotating drummers and bass players, like all different people throughout the times. And then he was in Trapped by Mormons. And Trapped by Mormons was Todd Nolan, who he was in Whiskey, I can't believe I can't remember the name of his band after Trapped by Mormons, but he was an amazing singer. And then the bass player was Justin, I think. And then it was Mark O'Toole, who wrote Relax, Don't Do It, When You Gonna Get to It. He was in Frankie Goes to Hollywood, and he's an amazing bass player. And now his son is a virtuoso on guitar in a band called the Boas. So if you haven't seen them, I would check them out. That kid's going places. And then he was in Severe Disappointments with Chuck Luce again. And then all the V words. He actually played bass in all the V words. Not by design. We needed a bass player. Everyone was like, oh, just have Jeff. Jeff plays bass. And I was like, yeah, I don't know if I want to be in a band with my boyfriend, because I was in a band with my bass player boyfriend, the Livid Kittens, and that didn't work out well for our relationship. So I don't know if that's bad juju or not, but it wasn't. So he played bass. And now that Valora quit, he's playing guitar. So he says he got a promotion.
Nice.
And we got a new bass player named Alan, who's pretty kick-ass. So I think it's going to be pretty. I mean, the first couple practices, it was weird. We didn't know like what are we doing, what's going on. But the last time we played, there were a few moments with the two guitars, because Rich is our other guitar player. He was in the chant. He's like an amazing guitar player, and Jeff's an amazing guitar player. So the two of them are starting to figure out how to work together, and they both play differently and they sound differently. But last practice, I was like, oh, it's going to melt some faces off, hopefully. Mine, at least.
I just found this really cool chant, and it's not the album that's rare because you can find it anywhere really. It's their second album when they moved to Atlanta at that
Mhm.
time, and it must be one of those promos because it's got a black and white, pretty. It's like an 8x10 in there, and
Uh-huh.
it has this whole promotional packet in there. I guess
Cool.
something to get. Yeah, I get pretty happy when I find that type of stuff out there, and I was like, wow, that's really neat. So it was my lucky day to find that. So yeah, so it sounds like there's a lot of really talented musicians that have been playing in these more recent bands, and kind of going back to the early years, even prior to Livid Kittens, when you were younger. Talk about some of the early years for you, music. What were you listening to, and how did you kind of grow musically over time until you started your first band?
Well, so my parents, like a lot of musicians say, oh, my parents were really into music. My parents were not. My dad listened to like Helen Reddy and Barbara Streisand. They had horrible taste in music. But I do remember one night our babysitter let me watch A Star Is Born with Chris Christopherson. And I was like, wow, I thought he was like really cool. And then the next week, or somewhere in that time, my deciding moment, like I want to be a rock star, was Tina Turner played on Saturday Night Live. And she had on this like white, I can remember her outfit. She had on like this white, like diapery, weird, like jumpsuity, short dress. And she was like taller than everybody else. Like she was like on this box or something, I remember. And she was so kick ass. And I remember thinking, oh my God, like that looks like the funnest thing in the whole world. Like that's what I want to be when I grow up. That's what I'm going to be. I'm going to be a rock star. So after that, I didn't take voice lessons. I wasn't shy at all. It's very, with the people that I knew, I was very outgoing, but I wasn't very popular, or, I had little bit of a lazy eye, and I was tall, and I had weird hip problems when I was little. So I was a little gangly, and, I wasn't confident. And then I guess I met my first like real group of friends, and they like really listened to classic rock. And I remember thinking I liked it. It was okay. There were songs that I like, classic rock songs, Bob Seger, Led Zeppelin. I do like Led Zeppelin, Van Halen and all that. And I liked it. But I just didn't, I don't know. It was like, oh, it was good. I liked it. It was great music. I didn't freak out. And then I remember meeting some friends, my friend Trish Mahoney, she was the singer for Severe Disappointments. She's been one of my oldest friends. And then her brother, John Mahoney, who's in Mystery and the Pookie Smackers, Mr. Entertainment and the Pookie Smackers. They introduced me to punk rock. And we snuck out of our house and we went to, I think a concert. I think it was the Dead Kennedys.
Okay.
And I was like, I found my people, like there's all the freaks are. Because I always like try to make friends with people that, not on purpose, but just people like the wayward kids and stuff. I would always bring home my mom and be like, oh boy, here's her new friend. So once I started hanging out with like them and like turned on to punk rock, and then we used to say, like, my friend Trisha's mom was a single mom and she worked at night, so we would just say we were going to sleep at Trisha's, and we'd go to the New Wave Lounge on Fort Lauderdale Beach, and like I just was exposed to New Wave and all those like crazy hair and clothes, and I threw out all my clothes and I went thrift shopping and I bought all these clothes from Salvation Army, and I cut my hair. Like I couldn't dye my hair pink or anything like that. My mom was not into that. Trish could. So to this day, my mom still calls her Purple Head. My dad used to be like, where's your purple head friend? So that was like the beginning of me really being into music and really being into like stuff like that, like really being passionate about bands. And I had my favorite new wave bands and my favorite punk rock bands. And then I started dating David, who was the bass player from the Livid Kittens. And we would go to Fire and Ice and dance, and we loved gothic, and I was super goth, and all those things. And I would always sing in my car, and I knew that I could sing. But I was just never outgoing enough to like start a band. But every time I would go see bands, I'd be like, wow, that looks like so much fun. And then David started the Livid Kittens with Cindy Dietz, who was the original singer. Right. She was originally in a band called India Loves You with Scott Patesky from Marilyn Manson, the brains of Marilyn Manson. And she came to that band, and then they had a guitar player named Brian Bullitt, who ended up leaving because he got a full scholarship to Brown University, and then a drummer, Tony. And they were in the band for about maybe a year, and I was jealous. It's like, I want to be in that band. And Cindy Dietz had an amazing voice. She was good, but she was a loose cannon, and she was very unreliable. And so I guess some things happened. I don't remember exactly what it was, but she didn't show up for a show, or something happened, and they were like, we got to fire her. And so I said, I'll try out. I want to try out for the band. So I tried out at Rodenhauer Studios. And I remember they had a new guitar player at the time, Chris Simon, who is my guitar god. He's like he's an amazing guitar player. He still is. And Tony and David, who was still my boyfriend. And so Chris and Tony voted yes, and David voted no. He said I wasn't good enough. And I just vetoed him. I'm like, I'm in the band now. And I wasn't good enough. I sang out of key. I was flat. Like, I'm still tend to be flat, I'm not pitch perfect. I don't have perfect timing. You know what I mean? I can write a good melody line, and I'm a musician, but I'm not trained, and I certainly wasn't trained back then.
I think some of the best though are the ones that are not trained.
Right. I took voice lessons at one point for like, I don't know, a couple weeks. And I think the lady was like, ah, and I still like, given my own devices, if I don't practice all the time, I tend to be a little flat. I know that about myself. I think now less so, because I've been in band for a long, long time. So yeah, that was how it kind of came about. But yeah, I used to sing all the time. I just was never, but when the opportunity came about, I was like, that's me. I want to be in the band.
Did you know whatever happened with Cindy Dietz? Whatever came of her? She
got pregnant, and she had a baby. I don't know. There may have been some medical problems with the baby. I don't know the whole thing. She ended up having a band afterwards. And then I think about 2 years ago, I looked her up on Facebook, because I wondered the same thing, like, where did she go? She had such a beautiful, strong, trained voice. And I think she's a hairdresser somewhere in like some other state. I don't know. It didn't look like she was doing anything musically. So.
Okay. Got it. And you also mentioned Scott Patesky, and any memories or stories of Scott?
I just known him a long, long time. I know that when Marilyn Manson played their very first show at my friend's 4th of July party on his patio. And I remember Scott, he to me, he was the talent in the band. I mean, Brian had his shtick and he was good. And, Brian is not without talent, without morals, but not without talent. But yeah, I don't have a lot of stories. I didn't really hang out with them so much. I hung out with Brian a lot, before he had black hair and he was, Marilyn Manson, when he was Brian Warner, but slowly but surely I didn't hang out with him that much. But I didn't really hang out with Scott. I mean, he went out with a few friends of mine and we played shows together, and he had some art in New York City. I went and saw some art shows of his, and we were friends, we talked and we had acquaintance, and I was very sad when he got sick. But I wasn't, super close with him. I don't have any good gossip or any good stories. You know what I mean? Yeah. He was kind of the sensible one. If there was any a sensible one back there then, you know what I mean, when Brad was in the band.
Right.
You had to be sensible around Brad. But yeah, I don't have any real good Scott stories though.
How did
He was in India Loves You, and he was not
Right.
happy when she left to be in the Livid Kittens.
how did his death and Brad's death, did that have any impact on you? Did you
Brad's did a lot because I loved Brad. He was such a good person, and he was just such a lost soul, and then he got himself clean and it was doing well. And then I don't know exactly what happened, but one of my best friends who happens to be living with me right now was very, very, very close to him. And unfortunately, I had to be the one to tell her that he passed away. And I did it in the worst way you could. It's like a joke now, like that we joke about, because I don't handle things like that well. So basically, I was living in New York City in her house, a railroad apartment. She was probably by that time like over me, like ready for me to move out. And she comes in, she's all stressed out, and she has a show and all this shit's going wrong for her. And she's like, oh my God, what else could go wrong? And I go, well, Brad's dead. And she was like, laugh now, because you have to laugh at it. And I know that he would laugh at it. But she was like, what? And I was like, oh God, that really came out wrong. So we have like a little joke now, we say that. But it was awful because he was doing so well. And, you know, all the girls loved Brad. He was so cute and he was charming and he was a really, really, really good person. He just got lost along the way. I mean, they had to, kick him out of Marilyn Manson because he was a junkie.
Right.
And it was sad because he would do good and then he wouldn't, and he would do good, and he wouldn't. But that one hit me really, really hard because he was a friend. Like, I hung out with him. Scott, it was just sad, because I saw him struggle and I saw him, be sick, and he was down here, and it was just sad. It's always sad watching that happen. So when he did pass, it was sad. And I knew it was sad for a lot of my friends that I love, but I didn't really hang out with him. But doesn't make it any less sad. It just wasn't as like Brad, because Brad was my friend.
Did you know, kind of watching Marilyn Manson, Spooky Kids into Marilyn Manson, did you have any idea at that time that they would become as big as they did as the 90s kind of rolled on?
Well, kind of a little bit, because a little bit, not, you never really know, but I remember that him, like Brian and or Marilyn and Daisy, they hustled. They worked fucking hard. Like they were hustling. They were at every show flyering. I mean, that's back when you handed out flyers, which worked way better than social media for the record. But they really hustled. And then David and I went to New York City for just a fun trip. And we met Brian there, and he was there to meet Trent Reznor. So we knew that was something, you know what I mean? And so after that, then it just kind of, they had, it's all who and how hard you work. So that was a who feather in their hat,
Yeah.
So after that, it just sort of rolled quickly, and they're,
Right.
Every show they played just got bigger and bigger and bigger and bigger and bigger. So good for them.
And well, with what's going on now, I'm sure you follow to some degree with what's happening with him and the whole.
Absolutely. And it's none of it's bullshit, like I can tell you, I never firsthand, but Jordy, whatever, I'm not going to shit talk people, but Jordy did some bad things to my friend, and I saw it, firsthand. I saw that. Brian, I never saw it firsthand, but he, that book he wrote a book.
Yes.
Like way back in the day. So basically he trashed all his friends, so I knew that that's the kind of person he is. And like I said, I'm not going to shit talk, but I believe the stories, you know what I mean? I'm a girl. I've been around people like that in my life, like neither one of them ever did anything like that to me. But I wasn't surprised. I wasn't like, oh my God, no. I was like, oh, okay. Yeah. But like the book was the book was kind of shitty. Like I didn't care that he said shitty things about me because I thought they were funny. I was Susie in the book, Susie and Andrew.
Oh, okay.
Were me and David, and he told us that we look like rotting corpses in the daylight. I'm like, yeah, and that's how you stole my shit because you look like a rotting corpse in the daylight now too. So clearly, you thought that was cool.
Yeah.
But some things that he did, some secrets he revealed about people, the rest of the world wouldn't know or care, but the inner circle found out things about people that maybe were not something that they should have known. You know what I mean? And so that to me, that was the turning point for me where I was like, really? Talk shit about me. I don't care, but don't tell, secrets that people tell you in confidence, and then write a book about it.
Right.
That's not nice.
No.
But let's not talk. I don't want to talk about bad about people.
Yeah.
Talk good about people.
Right.
Well, lots of good people in the scene.
Yes.
Still are, lots of good bands and
right. And just speaking about that, as you were kind of getting more familiar with some of the venues and clubs around the late 90s, what are some of your memories of some of the places you would go to see shows and then start to play shows at?
Well, Squeeze, of course, where you saw us play. They were so accommodating to bands. They like our first show was at Spanish River High School, and our second show was at the Ambassador in Deerfield Beach. And I talked Jack, the owner of Squeeze, into coming to the Ambassador to see my band play because he wasn't going to let us play at Squeeze unless unless we were drawing or having like something. You can just play there. You had to have a little name for yourself, and we didn't really. And everyone's like, Jack's never going to come. Well, he showed up and booked us a show at Squeeze like soon thereafter. And I always loved playing Squeeze and seeing bands at Squeeze because it was, first of all, it was a built-in crowd. And then you'd have your crowd on top of it. So you never really played to an empty room. And then Jack would always give us a little extra money because we would always decorate the stage. Like we had a leopard theme. We had one year we did like a forest and we had all these trees and we spray painted them gold glitter. And like I was like a forest nymph. And it was just really fun to play there. And then there were other venues that like paid, like +5. The ownership wasn't always the best, but it was a big ass club with a really good sound system. And like your average payout would be like $500. Like I would kill to make $500 at a club right now. There was just a lot of places to play. Trying to think of them all. Well, Respectables, which you can still play out, which is awesome. Right. Rodney did an amazing job with that and still going strong. They're having shows again. I think we were one of the first bands to play there when they started having shows.
Did you ever play Churchill's?
Many times. It's funny because every time you play Churchill's, you make a pact with your band and never play there again, and then you always play there again. It's just that place. You want to try to get an early slot. If not, you go in at like 4 a.m. and no one's there. But it's history, So yeah, we played the Livid Kittens played there a shit ton, and all the V-Words played there. I've seen so many bands play there. There's a big lawsuit thing going on with them now. I don't know exactly. I haven't been really following it, but there's one guy who says he's the owner and the other guy says he's the manager, and they're kind of fighting over who has rights to it. Hopefully we'll be able to play there again because it's fun. It's fun to play there, but it's also like, oh, Churchill's. Maybe you're gonna get your shit stolen out of your car, which has happened.
Right.
Maybe you'll go on at 5:30 in the morning, but it's a cool stage. It's fun. It's always fun.
It's like the last remaining of those clubs from back at that time, right? I mean, there's not many that are still around. I mean, Respectables has been around for a while, but I think Churchill's predates Respectables.
Oh, yeah, for sure.
You like playing Palm Beach?
I like playing Palm Beach. I mean, there's a good scene up there. There's a lot of places. Well, there was pre-COVID places to play. I mean, Voltaire, which they just permanently closed their doors, which is sad. Have you ever been there? Just beautiful club, beautiful stage. beautiful lights, it's like couches, like antique couches, and billowing like things on the stage. And then they were not going to have bands anymore, and they were just kind of throwing like fetish parties, and then that sort of just stopped. So now I think Rodney's, I call him the mayor of Clematis. I think he owns Lost Weekend below, so he's going to just make it Lost Weekend on both floors, which is sad because it was a beautiful club. And then Respectables, I love playing Respectables. I love like Propaganda, they're back open and having shows, which is awesome because then I can go have a cocktail with your friend. I don't remember his name. I know him by Tacos Are Good because that's his handle on Instagram.
Baron.
Yes, and he makes a delicious old fashioned, which is my favorite. So I like playing there. I like playing all over. You know, I wish there was more in Broward. It seems like, you know, Miami's very cliquey and Palm Beach is very cliquey. And then there's the Broward people that are kind of like, well, we can play here or here, I guess. I wish there was more in Broward to play. I wish there were more like good bars without TVs. Like I hate going into a bar and there's like TVs because then everyone's just kind of focusing on the TV. Like I don't want to watch sports when I'm listening to punk rock. Oh, you know, I want to like, maybe like there's a bar in New York City where they play weird midget porn and like all kinds of weird, nothing against small people.
Oh, okay.
But yeah, they play weird stuff on the TV.
Right.
And Loser Lounge, I got to give them a shout out because they are in Broward and they do have a TV, but they don't play television. And they do have shows. And Wyatt built that whole thing with his bare hands.
Yeah.
So that's kind of hot. And they do have shows there. It's they're back up and having shows. So that's a good venue that should get a shout out because people need a little love.
Looking at some of the discography from the Livid Kittens, were you on the 92 demo?
The first one, right?
Yeah, the Fuzz Drenched and Dripping.
Yes, I'm on that, and that is the only one. Okay, I'm putting a plea out there to all people out there. If you have a copy of that cassette, please send it to me. I will send you other things, gifts. Because for some reason I do not have that one. And if you look at the artwork on the front, that was my friend Todd drew that picture. And if you blow it up, the cat has a hit of acid on its tongue. And that hit of acid is a very, very small photo of the Livid Kittens.
Nice.
It's beautiful. Nice. And that's a really, really good, it's a good one.
It is a good one.
And I don't have it. I just called David, my old bass player today, and I was like, do you have one of those? Because I don't have one.
How does that happen? You know what? There's a lot of people, not just with interviews, but people I talk to who have music out there, and some of it may be 20, 30, 40 years old, and they don't have their own stuff. How does that happen? Like, how does it...
Irresponsibility of youth. You know, I thought I had one and I moved a bunch of times, and you give them away and people are like, oh, can I have that? You know, and you're like, okay, cute boy, here. And then you realize I don't even have a copy for myself. And you figure someone else in the band has a copy for your somehow.
Right.
There's a box somewhere. I had a warehouse for 10 years when I lived in New York here. And a lot of things didn't make it out of the warehouse. So I don't know how that happened, but I know I had a copy, and I used to have the ADAT or EDAT or ADAT, whatever, the little thing that they put it all on before they mix it. I was responsible for that, and it was in my secret box, and I don't have that either. So,
did Jeremy Stasko do that?
Yes.
It's hard to not bring him up because he's done so many artists from South Florida.
Yeah.
So what are some of your memories working with him?
He was awesome. He was so cool. He just made you feel so comfortable. So comfortable. He was just such a cool, like, guy, and he was cute, nice. He knew what he was doing. You know, he made me feel comfortable because at the time, it was very tense for me in the band, because I was flat here and there, you know, so I was very nervous to record. I hadn't been in the band very long. And he just made me feel so at ease. And he's just such a cool guy. And actually probably about 2 years ago, maybe right before COVID, I went and saw Jeff Wilhite, who was one of the drummers for the Livid Kittens, play. He did like a little solo show with guitar singing. It was really quite nice. And Jeremy showed up and I screamed. I was like, oh my God. I hadn't seen him in so long and he looks the same. But he's just a cool guy, you know.
Yeah.
I think we did, I don't know if we did them all. We might have did the other ones. It's like all like the 90s are kind of a blur. But I think we did alone, this one, Alone with Everybody. I think we did that.
Yeah, I think
there
you're
as
right.
well.
Yeah, I think you're right.
And that's actually a photograph that Mark Aptigan who took, which is a really cool before Photoshop. He just put a projector on me with like weird roots and trees.
Interesting.
And yeah, there's some really beautiful photos from that session. Yeah, and people think now they look at it, it looks like it's Photoshop, but it was pre-Photoshop. And dating myself now.
I think that's something that really stood out is the artwork, especially of that tape, the 94 one of Alone with Everybody. But for me, my personal favorite was Undercool, which always bummed me out that it was on, I mean, it was on CD. I mean, if it was on cassette, it would be even smaller, but to want that on vinyl at some point,
right.
You know,
I would love that on vinyl.
Can you talk about that record and that cover? Because it's just
that cover. Covers. The guy who took that photo, his name is Louis. I can't remember. It's in here. Louis. He was friends with our guitar player Francis. But that's actually my gun. It's a 357 Magnum snub nose. So it's my gun. I guess that's not very woke now. But that's okay. I do have my opinions on guns, and they are in alliance with the liberals. And but I have that gun because I got robbed in the middle of the night by a huge man in a ski mask, and I was naked. And I woke up to a man in my house with a ski mask. So the next day, my friend bought me a gun, taught me how to shoot it. So that's my gun, 357 Magnum snub nose. That's my friend's younger brother's jock strap when he was like, I don't know, I think it was his jock strap when he was like 8. And when he became like a teenager, a man like 19, 20, I used to say, this is Jose's jock strap. And he used to be like, that was when I was younger. Because it literally is like a teeny tiny little thing. But that record, that's on that record. Uma Hemikuda, Wide Open, Number 9, Flying. It's a good record. I mean, I think they're all good. Like I listened to them and I'm like, well, we were good. we had good music. Like, people always like wanted to assume that just because I dressed in a certain way that we weren't that good, but we were good. It was the 90s. I mean, who wore clothes in the 90s?
And
I did.
There were a lot of radio stations like Zeta and WKPX, and I even think the Buzz too had played the Livid Kittens. So how do you think that helped? Did that give a boost at all, or what was that?
It gave a boost early. They did play, and the Miami one, the WVMU.
Okay, yeah, I forgot about that one.
Like I don't remember the exact letters. It was good at the beginning because they played from Fuzz Drenched and Dripping. They played a lot of that, like Fangs. That's my husband's favorite song, and that's the first time he heard the Livid Kittens, and then he came and saw us play. I think that's on that one, right? Yeah. So it gave us a little bit of a boost, but we had to work really hard for our fans because people, like, for some reason, no matter what band I'm in, it's not the most popular band. I don't know why, but it helped the radio stations, but that kind of died off quickly in the 90s, and then there's not a lot of, radio that plays local music after that. But yeah, it helped, right, for sure. We got fans, especially like mostly young girls would come, like high school girls from WKPX would come and see us play at our all ages show, and they would tell me that they heard about us on KPX. So it was definitely cool.
And you played a Zeta Fest too, right? One or two of
We
them?
did. And that was like, I think that was the biggest show. There's two biggest shows, three, but two, I think Zeta Fest was the biggest, most people we ever played to. And it was so much fun. And we were so tight. I was so glad we were tight because we could not sometimes be not tight. And it was so fun. It was like 100,000 degrees out. And I had all my friends, my cousin was visiting at the time and she came up and danced on stage and my best friend came and sang backing vocals for a song. I was like letting everybody like come up and enjoy the rock star moment. Cause there's probably, I don't know, over 1,000 people. So for us, that was awesome. And then we played Warped Tour one time, which that was pretty awesome. That was really very hard because we played at 12:30 p.m. In the middle of August, in the blazing hot sun. And right after the show, I went behind the stage and I like guzzled like a huge thing of water. And right as this kid came up to me, can I take your picture? I like projectile vomited all this water, like, it's not flattering. And he's like, oh, I got that also. Oh, great. It wasn't like, it wasn't on a phone. It was on a camera. So I was like, great. That's gonna hopefully, at least I hope it was at least flattering,
Yeah. Hopefully it wasn't.
I hope I look cute vomiting water. Luckily it was water, but that was a really fun show.
Was that like the local stage that you played? What year was that? 96, 97 or?
I think it was maybe in the 2000s.
Oh, was it?
Even.
Because I remember they had like a local stage too.
Yeah, it was a local stage. It was in Pompano.
Yeah, Pompano.
Because I met, it was probably in 2000s because I met one of my really good friends that day. She was in high school. And at the time she wasn't my friend yet. And she had her dad take her to come see us play. And she came up and asked if she could photograph me. And I said, sure. And we went and did a photo shoot one day. And then she became my friend and she's still my friend. Her name's Lexi. So I think it was in 2000s because in the 90s, she would have been, I don't know, like elementary school. So it'd probably be early 2000s. It's hard. We played so many shows and they're all like blurred together.
Right.
Like this morning, I was trying to think of all the bands we opened for and which we were pretty lucky in that way. And it was like, wow, I know I forgot some.
I mean, I know some of the big ones that I'm a fan of, The Damned, Fear, Iggy Pop, and the Cramps. What was it like opening up for a band like The Damned? Because I know when I seen them play, I mean, their fans are just,
it was
love them.
Awesome. Unfortunately, it was in the middle of a hurricane, and not just the preparation for a hurricane, the actual hurricane was happening outside the venue. So instead of being like really packed, there was maybe 100 people there. It was Hurricane Irene, and we literally drove through the hurricane to get there, and we weren't even sure if the show was going to happen. And we were calling the venue and nobody was answering, and it was pre-cell phone. So we were like, well, let's just go and see. We played with the Drug Czars. I actually have the poster, it's not in here in the other room, and The Damned. And it was awesome. Like the crowd was really receptive of us. They were really nice. The best part is, there's two best parts. After the show, my friend and I got on the tour bus with Dave Vanian had already left, but it was Captain Sensible, a girl, and a drummer. The drummer was not the original drummer. I remember he was in a Smiths cover band in England, and that's how they found him.
Yeah.
And they were starving and they wanted to know where they could go eat. And there was no power, like everything was like shut down. It's like 4 a.m. in the middle of a freaking hurricane. And so I called the Floridian and they were open. And so we went with them on their tour bus to the Floridian and ate pancakes with The Damned. Just me and my friend. So it was awesome. Like Captain Sensible eating pancakes.
Yeah.
And I've, of course, no cell phone, so I don't have a picture of it to prove
Right.
it, but it happened. And then the second best part is he wrote a little write-up about playing during a hurricane and said that the opening band was a scantily clad female fronted rock band that sounded like a female fronted Hawkwind. So that was like really a good compliment. I mean, Hawkwind, heck yeah, it could be compared to worse, rather than being compared to like everyone wants to compare you to like Hole, or we didn't sound like Hole. I was a blonde girl. That's all.
Yeah.
In the 90s, but we didn't sound like Hole.
No.
So it was cool. That was like cool, but yeah, it was a good time.
And just talk about some of your looks and your outfits, because you definitely, when you think about, I mean, yeah, there were some female singers down at South Florida at that time, but not many. So you really stood out, though. So talk to me about some of your outfits that you wore and all that. And was that all
clearly I didn't wear a top much. I look back, like I always covered my nipples, but wore pasties. I just like to. It wasn't like, I don't know what I was thinking. Now I wouldn't do that. Just not. If I was younger, I would, like, I wasn't trying to do it to exploit my feminism or anything like that. I just did it because I thought I should be able to wear whatever I wanted. And I thought it looked cool. And I wanted it to be like, I wanted, when you looked at us, to see like art, I wanted to be artful and beautiful and cool. And if that meant I wore a sheer shirt or sheer dress, I didn't care. Like, boobs should not be something that's so like, oh my God, in Europe, they walk around with no clothes on, no shirts on at the beach and down the strip, it's no big deal. And I think in America, it's so, frowned upon. And then now everybody is kind of like, well, you're exploiting the female body. And it's like, no, I'm not. I'm celebrating it. Like, I was young, I looked good, and it was fun. And I enjoyed it. And it wasn't like, oh, look at, I don't want you to just look at my boobs. But it was just that, was the outfit I wanted to wear. I thought it was cool. I thought it looked good, it was fun. I mean, my guitar player, Vincente, he wore like a sheer mesh, one fishnet bodysuit one time. So it wasn't just me. Right. We were risque, it was the 90s. It was a very risque time for fashion and feminism and stuff. There were the riot, I think all the riot girl movement probably were like, oh, that girl, because we did play a riot girl show. And I didn't really fit in.
Who did you remember?
But I was still a riot girl, damn it.
Yeah, you remember who you played with?
Yeah, it was actually the day Kurt Cobain was found dead. And we played with Jack Off Jill, who they were my friends. Jack Off Jill, 7 Year Bitch, and Babes in Toyland. Okay. And they were really good friends with Kurt Cobain. So they were kind of in a really weird space when they got there. I felt bad for them. Their friend had just killed himself. And it was at the Cameo Theater. And it was unfortunate for us because we were like at the height of like we had a few little ebbs and flows, but we were at one of our highs, and our guitar player quit 2 weeks before the show. And so this guy, Mike, came and filled in for us, and he did a stellar job for what he had 2 weeks. But, there were a lot of scouts and things at that show that I think it would have turned out a different story if we had had our guitar player, but we didn't. And so we didn't really sound like the Livid Kittens. I mean, we played the Livid Kittens songs, but we didn't have that fuzzy, like fudge drenched guitar and all the like nuances that we did. And, this guy, Mike, God bless him, he came in and learned everything super fast, and he was super tight, and he didn't miss anything, but it wasn't the Livid Kittens. So it was kind of sucked for us that.
I'm glad you brought that up, because that's a kind of a good segue page to my next question. Is there were a lot of bands at that time who were getting signed, and Livid Kittens didn't seem like that was happening. So what are your memories of, besides that moment? Was there anything else that you thought may have played a part in that, or?
Well, we didn't tour. I just like, we didn't, maybe we were too comfortable in our lives to tour. We were broke, so I couldn't I didn't want to live in a van and starve. Like I just, looking back, I should have. I do know there was one night when I know there were A&R people there that came to see us, and we sucked. Like everything that could go wrong went wrong that night. Like the sound was terrible. I couldn't hear myself. I was flat. It was just like a snowball of suckery, which was so unfortunate because we used to practice 3 days a week. Like now we practice once a week, if that. But we were we practiced, we were a tight ass band. And just that night, it was just, the stars were not aligned for the Livid Kittens. So that was unfortunate. And then I don't know, I don't know what really happened. I feel like we were like the scene's forgotten band. And I thought we were great. But maybe I was too close to it. But now looking back, when I listen to CDs and stuff, they're really good. The songs are good written songs. They're tight. Yeah. They're well recorded. So
it's not dated sounding. It sounds I think it actually had gotten better over the years. Not that it was bad back then, but I think
thank you.
There's some bands that their music's like that, where over time it just gets better, and
yeah, there's some good songs, especially on this one.
Yeah.
Fall in Love With. That's probably my favorite one.
Yeah. So that's one of the that's More Flames to Fall in Love With.
Yeah.
So that I think, and correct me if I'm wrong, I think that has like the most songs out of anything you put out, right?
Yeah, that one has 8.
Yeah.
Yeah, everything else is short. We're on this really cool compilation, 12 Tales, which was sold at Hot Topic, which was pretty awesome, with bands like Rasputina, Future Bible Heroes, the Cranes, the Creatures, legendary Pink Dots, some pretty famous bands. So it was kind of cool. And we actually got checks for that.
Really? How did that come about, getting you on that?
It came about with my friend Julie, the girl who's living with me, and the girl right now, and the girl that I dropped the Brad bomb on. She worked for a label, and they were putting together, I guess they were hired to put together a compilation for Hot Topic. And it was sort of gothic-ish sounding. And we have a song called Flying, which is, I don't know if you'd want to call it gothic, but it has a gothic feel. And so she chose it and sent it in to see if it got approved, and it got approved. So thank you, Julie. And we got a few, not a lot of money. I think one time we got a check for maybe $400. And so we were in New York City at the time playing a show. And so we just went out and had a lavish dinner.
Nice.
Took her out to dinner.
Yeah. I think there was one other compilation too prior to that. Bill Corey's Resident Noise, Volume 1. You remember that comp?
No, what song's on there? I remember the comp. What song do we do on
it? So the song on there from Livid Kittens.
So you do more research than me.
Down to the Ocean.
Oh, wow. Yeah, that's a good one.
Yeah. So
that's Chris Simon. My first guitar player in the band. There's Brian Bullitt, but he wasn't in the band with me. So Chris Simon, that's my guitar god. Although Francis, credit due, he was a really good songwriter and a very great guitar player. But Down to the Ocean is probably one of my favorite Livid Kitten songs, because it's super guitar and fuzzy and flangery, and it's was really captured that time, our sound during that time.
Yeah. And you may not know this, and that's okay if you don't, but this year, and it's on the audio version, not the video version, because YouTube's they're very sensitive when it comes to copyrights, and that's where even for local artists, it picks up sometimes. But on the podcast on the Spotify, iTunes version, the beginning songs that play, it's like a mix, almost like a radio changing stations. And the second song on that little thing that I did is Livid Kittens song, Wide Open.
Oh, awesome.
Yeah.
That's a great song.
It is a great song.
It's a great song. I wrote that about my friends. My friend had a Kawasaki 1000 or something. He took me out for a ride on it once, and we went really, really fast. We got pulled over. We were going so fast. And I was like, wow, that's, if I was a, more badass, I'd have a motorcycle. So I'll just write a song about one. Yeah. I'm too accident prone for a motorcycle, especially now. My husband would die. He got me roller skates for our anniversary because that's what I wanted. And he was like, oh, roller skates. What? You're going to come back with a broken arm. I haven't yet.
Right. Do you have any good Iggy Pop stories from when you opened for him?
I kind of, sort of. So he is a really, really nice guy, like so nice. And for some reason, so we opened a lot of shows at the Culture Room, and this is segueing off a little, and I'll go back to Iggy, but and a lot of just with that said, a lot of other local bands used to kind of poo-poo it, like, oh, the Livid Kittens are opening again. And it wasn't because, I don't think it was really because that Greg's the owner, that he liked us better than local bands. He just knew that we were going to show up on time. We were going to be really tight. We were going to load in, we were going to load out, and there's going to be no problems with us. We didn't have to worry, like, is the drummer going to show up? He just knew that it was cool. We were going to do it. He didn't have to worry about it. So he gave us like the Cramps and New York Dolls and Detroit Cobras and like all these bands we opened up for. But Iggy Pop was probably my favorite. And so it went smoothly. Like even Iggy kind of like, I could see when we were playing, he kind of like there used to be like not really a backstage, but there was like this stairway in the back of the stage where you kind of would hang out until you got up on stage, or an office. And I saw, the office was the backstage, but I saw him kind of peeking and watching for a bit. So after the show, like whatever bouncer was in charge, he wasn't going to let me go back there and get an autograph from Iggy Pop. And I was like so upset because first of all, we weren't getting paid. There's all these people, we didn't make that draw, Iggy Pop did, but we worked hard and it's a job and we're not getting paid. You should at least let me go meet the guy that we're opening for. And the guy the bouncer was like, no, and he kind of pushed me, and Iggy saw it and he's like, dude, girl just played a fabulous set. He's like, she just wants to come say hi. And so the guy's like, all right. And he let me come say hi, and I have like a really good picture of him and I, my eyelashes half hanging off. And then he signed my poster and gave himself a Hitler mustache, which is pretty funny. So that was he was just so nice. And then I think maybe even it was probably 10 years later, I had ran into him here and there. I ran into him once at Pottery Barn
okay.
in Lincoln Road Mall. And then he was, he knows all the girls from Sweat Records, and they were having Sweat Fest or whatever. And he was there, and he was in his Rolls, or I think it was a Rolls. And I was walking with Jeff to go to Sweat Fest, and he beeped and waved at me. And Jeff's like, oh, I think he's waving at me. And I was like, he's not waving at you. He's waving at me, dude. I know you're a rock star, but no, he's waving at me.
Right.
And I was like, he waved at me, which is cool. He's very real, He's very real. He's very nice. So that was awesome. I mean, most of the bands we played with were nice.
Right.
A few of them, were not so nice, but whatever. They're rock stars. Some of them were a little old and jaded, so let them.
Besides that one incident you had with that bouncer at that show, I remember a lot of bouncers were just really, I don't even know the words to say at this point, but thinking back of that time, were there any other times where you noticed like there's bouncers were out of line or they did something that you were just like, you kind of stopped for a second, or maybe you were thinking in your head, like, what's going on?
Not necessarily playing, more so one time playing at the Culture Room, they did not have enough security and we opened for Fear. Why you would have the Livid Kittens open for Fear and why we accepted, I don't know. I like Fear. But the band that played right before us was this white supremacist, good old boy skinheads from Palm Beach. And when we were on stage, they were throwing beers at us and calling us names. And then after Fear, they like beat up all my friends. And I ended up having to lock myself in the liquor cage because this skinhead was going to basically kill me. And my boyfriend at the time got like stitches across his face. It was like, where is the security? But not too much with that. I mean, I did get thrown, nothing to do with the Livid Kittens, but I did have a skinhead one time punch my boyfriend at the time, and I punched the skinhead back, and the bouncer just saw me and he picked me up as a bat club. He literally picked me up and threw me. I think I weighed 120 pounds at the time, threw me onto the pavement, like slid across the pavement. And like my whole side was like looked like I was in a motorcycle accident. And I was just like, what just happened? But for the most part, no. At Squeeze, Willie, the bouncer, the big 900 feet black man, he was my bodyguard. Like he would just make sure nobody got anywhere near me. Because sometimes, some drunken fucker would try to get up on stage and do something inappropriate because they thought, I would welcome that because I had on pasties. And he would make sure that didn't happen. And I did see him one time. This guy called him an inappropriate name and tried to punch him. Why he would do that to a guy that size? And I saw him turn him upside down and drop him on his head outside, which was a little excessive. I'm sure the guy got very hurt, but he was drunk and he called him a not nice word. So that, but not too many things. There was one time, yes. Am I rambling too much?
No, no. I mean, I was curious about, because I thought there
was a time we played this club in Davie, and they decided that they weren't going to pay us, even though it was packed. And David got in an argument with the owner, and the bouncer threw him out. And I don't know how the whole thing happened, but somehow he went back in, and then the cops came, and the cops threatened to arrest him. So he left, and his wife was looking for him, and she went to go find him, and a cop pushed her, and she stuck her finger right here. She said, "Don't push me." And he threw her down. The cop threw her down on the ground, like stuck his foot on her neck, and arrested her, dragged her to the thing. And she ended up getting charged with assault on an officer. And she had that was like 20 years ago. She tried to get a teaching job. She's a teacher now. And she had to go through all these legal hoops to get it a sponge. I don't know that word. A sponge? Taken off.
Yeah.
So yeah, there was cop things. And I almost got arrested in Hollywood for I was painted I was painted like that picture, actually, all green.
Okay.
And the cops came up and were like waving their handcuffs at me, like I had to put something on or they were going to arrest me. But that's about it. Not too many. There's a lot of shows, so that's very small in comparison. I think the worst was the Fear and the skinheads beating up all my friends.
Yeah, that's unfortunate.
It was scary.
Yeah, no, I can imagine. Yeah. And playing with all the V words, I'm sure now compared to then, how different is it for you?
It's different in a lot of ways. One, we're not part of any of the cliques. And first of all, I'm not saying anything bad about bands because there's a lot of really good bands right now in South Florida, and people just need to go out and discover them because there's some really good bands. But they're kind of younger, and so they stick with their bands that they like, and so it's really hard to get them to want to play with us. That was one of a more stressful thing about being in this band, is like trying to get other bands. I mean, there are a lot of bands that were super cool and awesome, but it was just like kind of fighting for people to recognize that we're, maybe we're older, but we're not old, and our band kicks ass. So that, and then what's also different for us, for me in particular, is I don't take myself so seriously. Like when I was in the Livid Kittens, it's so serious. And now it's like, we're in a band called All the V Words. All our names began with V. All our songs began with V. Like, we didn't take ourselves seriously. Like, it's funny. We have a sense of humor about it all. I'm not trying to be a famous rock star at this point. Now, would I love to be? Of course. That's my dream come true. To me, there's nothing funner than playing on stage in front of people. It's just fun.
Yeah. Is the sound,
it's all coming together.
Is the sound changing at all with now the name change too, or are you kind of sticking to the same formula?
I think it's changing because of, Valora won't be writing. She wrote a lot of the songs, and now Jeff's playing guitar. So the guitar sound is changing because now we have two and Valora was a good guitar player, very good guitar player. But she wasn't like, she didn't have, chops, she had the way she played and it was fantastic. So there's not, I will miss that. But yeah, it's going to change just because the dynamic, is changing. I mean, I still write the same way. I've written the same way from the beginning, you know what I mean? So they all, at some point someone was like, it sounds like the Livid Kittens. I'm like, well, if you really listen to it, it doesn't, you know what I mean? It's just me. So it's going to have Livid Kitten-esque-ness to it. But yeah, I'm excited to see what it turns into, because we've only had maybe 4 practices as Vudra, but I'm excited. I mean, our drummer he's a beast. He's just badass. He was in a lot of bands back in the day too. So he's just badass.
What bands was he in?
He was in, I actually wanted to make sure today when I talked to him, he was in the Ruins. Most of these were like early 2000s, but he was in the Ruins, Knuckle Bath, Exterminatus. I don't know how to say it. It's like Exterminatus. And 10 Paces, which I remember 10 Paces. And then he's also in another band currently with alongside this band, Vudra. He's in a band called Goat Rope. And I haven't seen or heard them. I don't think they played out yet, but they're really hard. But he brings a certain badassery to all the V Words and now Vudra, I think.
I know one thing you mentioned about the Living Kittens is, and it sounded like kind of like a regret to a degree, was the not touring. And I'm not expecting you to go on a full tour, but are there any plans as you kind of get back out there to not just play the local places in South Florida, but maybe go up more throughout Florida itself, maybe a little more North Georgia, that sort of thing?
Yeah. Well, the Living Kittens did play all Florida, and we played New York City, but we didn't go on like a bus and go across the country. But all the V Words, we did do like a little mini tour. So we'll do those again. It's even harder now because we have, adult responsibilities. Some of our members have families. Most of their children are launched, so to speak. So they're, they can pay for their, but we have houses and stuff. So we can't go for long periods of time. Jeff owns his own business, but we played Chattanooga, Atlanta, and Chattanooga was really fun. Forgot the other place. So we're going to do like, Gainesville, Atlanta, Chattanooga. So we'll do some of those and then go. I do want to play New York City again. We have some friends in Philly. I still want to play there.
Okay.
So we're gonna get out and play more than we did. We also, it's a little easier because we all have jobs, so we can, afford to put gas in the car.
And with
Yeah.
Jeff also early being in Roach Motel, is he from the Gainesville area?
He was born in Miami.
Oh, Miami.
And then he went to school in Gainesville.
Okay.
So he's a Floridian.
Okay. Where'd he go to UF?
Hmm?
Where'd he go to University of Florida?
Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah, Gainesville. That
Yeah.
Gator country. Yeah.
Gainesville's
He's
always
really
been
smart.
Gainesville's always been one of those hotbeds too for music and a lot of bands.
Oh yeah.
Gainesville.
Yeah, and he has, talk about archives. He has, first of all, he has a whole, he collects Florida bands. So he's just got 45s. He got a whole 45 box of Florida bands.
Okay.
And then during the pandemic, one of his projects was to archive a lot of live shows of different bands and stuff. So he's got a lot of archives of that stuff. He wants to try to put it up somehow. I don't know what he's going to do. That's your project.
Sounds like he may need to come on the podcast at some point too.
He's interesting. He's got stories.
Yeah.
He's got cool. And he was really good friends with the Eat. We just recently, somebody gave us a DVD or something, not a DVD, but a link to the Eat playing at Sunrise Musical Theater for New Year's Eve in 92 or something. We're gonna watch it tonight, maybe.
Yeah.
It's really long.
That's always neat though, to when you kind of discover something like that and you've never seen it before, or maybe you were there and you don't really remember it from that that angle. So that's pretty neat.
Yeah, I wish we had more Livid Kittens shows, but we don't really have a lot. We have one from I have a good story. We have one from, I forget the name of this big, it was a raw bar. We played this raw bar, and I'm not going to say names, but this guy who's been in local bands got on stage, and he was sitting on stage and he's cutting holes in these plastic cups. Hopefully this isn't too risque for your podcast. Cutting holes in plastic cups. Was like, what the heck is he doing? Stuck him up his pants and proceeded to jack off. I don't know how it all happened, but somehow stuff ended up on the floor. The lady, the waitress walks by and throws a towel on it and gives me stink eye. That was part of our show. I about died. And David kicks him off the stage, and we're like, oh my God, what did you, that's disgusting. Then the next day, my mom is driving to work, the Paul and Young Ron show. This girl calls in and was there eating oysters, disgusted, and proceeds to tell the whole story on Paul and Young Ron. And then they were like, well, who is the band? She's like, the Livid Kittens. My mom's like, what? She gets to work. She calls me up. She's like, did you have some guy ejaculate on your stage last night, Paige? She's like, that's going too far. I was like, no, he did, but no, it wasn't part of the show. It was a random guy. I was like, it was a surprise to us all.
Oh man, that's a good story to end on there. The last thing I wanted to ask you about, and then we'll kind of round things out here, was I know with all the V Words, that was the only band you've been in so far where you had a release on vinyl, and I know that you are a vinyl collector yourself, and Jeff obviously is an archivist as well. So can you talk a little about your collection, and was that your idea or just the band's idea to put that album on vinyl? Or
it was the band's idea, all of us. Everyone in our band, Jeff's the collector. I have accumulated vinyl throughout the years, and not very much, and more so since I've been with him. But he has thousands and thousands and thousands and thousands of records and 45. So he was always used to joke and be like, the Living Kittens don't have anything on vinyl. and we don't, and it sucks. And it just was the 90s, and like everybody did stuff on cassettes and CDs, and we just were, I guess, not cool enough. But for this one, it was kind of like a no-brainer because Valora and her husband, they collect vinyl. Rich collects vinyl. Jeff collects vinyl. I have vinyl. So we really just, we're like, we have to do it on vinyl. And a lot of people, like, when you ask them, do you have a record player? They're like, no, but they still want one. They keep it. And then there's a download code that you can download it. And it's a beautiful record. I'm so proud of it. It's really done so well. The artwork is on the cover is amazing. Me and Valora or Julie hand cut out all those words and stuck them onto paper. So it was a labor of love.
Yeah.
And it was recorded by Fernie, who's amazing. So it's good. I'll send you one.
I actually have it on black, but I don't have the purple one.
I'll see if I have a purple one.
Yeah, because the purple.
And then also anyone who's listening, if they follow Vudra Band on Instagram and send me a message, I will send you a record because we have a lot of them and we need more followers. So please follow us because apparently that means a lot to the outside world if you're going to play 3 points or something, which we don't have a lot of followers. We don't do due diligence. I'm trying to be better.
You gotta use more hashtags and post more frequently.
I know. Well, I've been posting now more. When we were posting a shit ton, like Julie was taking care of all that.
Yeah.
And posting a lot. It
takes a lot. It's almost a job in itself.
It is
promoting yourself. It is. But it's a great record. It's a great record, and that's one thing I'm really kind of happy about too. Is that it doesn't sound like a Livid Kittens record, but it still sounds like you. So, but it's like the next like chapter.
Right. It's more. I don't know. I don't want to say mature. I prefer not to be any more mature than I need to be. But yeah, it's good. And then like Vudra is a hybrid of that. That's kind of why we named it Vudra, because I wanted it to be a V still. I liked all the V words, but I felt like we all kind of felt like that was with Valora. And so we should change it. So we wanted it to keep it. And Vudra doesn't, we couldn't have Vudra on Instagram because some girl in some other country who has like 6 followers and has never been back on her Instagram since 2000 and something has that name. But other than that, it's not really a word. So to me, it sounds kind of witchy and gothic and metal all rolled in one, which is kind of what we are.
Are you still Violet Vulvalicious Vox?
Yes. I'm like, I want to still be Violet. I'm not ready to give it up. So it's Violet Vulvalicious Vox. And now it's Vargas because I married Von Vargas. And I did, in real life, I did not take his name. My name's still Paige Harvey, not Paige Hodap. But I was like, I'll take your band name. I'll be, Violet Vargas.
Okay.
So I have 4. Everyone has 2 names and I have 4.
Nice.
It works.
Yeah. I'm glad I don't have to spell that out a lot because it's a lot of letters in your
You
name.
could just call me Violet V Vox.
That's perfect. So, and just closing here, Paige, I'm going to kind of leave it up to you. Anything you want to tell people, fans of yours from back in the day to currently, anything else you wanted to share with the listeners out there?
Just thank you if you supported me and my ventures and bands over the years. I appreciate it. If you don't follow us on Instagram, please try to. If you hear of us playing, we have a show. Wait, I have a show to promote. See, I'm terrible at this. We were playing August 21st, our first show as Vudra at Propaganda with Sweet Bronco and another band, which it's La Lava or La Lavo. I'm probably saying their name wrong because we just kind of confirmed it yesterday. But please come out and see us play. Please support your local musicians. And if you think that there's not good local music in South Florida, just do a little research, because there are some really, really, really great bands out there. And they, now more than ever, we need your support, and support your local record store. And just, come say hi if you've never met me. I'm not stuck up. I like to talk to people.